and some of the bloodiest conflicts would be fought here.
In our yard, we were known as JLP supporters. In those days, they used to fight politics with stones, bottles and stones and sticks. So you would find that at the end of a public meeting, when the People's National Party would end their public meeting and people are going home, and they would pass our place, they would throw stones. My grandmother would say to me, go under the bed, Babsy, I don't want anybody to, anything to hit you.
After 30 years, Norman Manley retired from politics. It was the late 60s. Civil rights had taken hold in the States. Young black Jamaicans were no longer grateful to the generation that had won them independence.
The fact that they singled him out to blame for a lot of the things that they felt were going wrong since independence, I think their anger at him and their dismissal of him must have been very painful, though always he would intellectually come to terms with it. Youth does this, they have to rebel against things.
First of all, you got a sense of an awakening, and that showed itself across the board. The growth of a sense of rejection and rebellion. Babylon must fall. Babylon being the society of colonialism, which continued into the late 60s and early 70s.
When you hear that Jamaica, independent Jamaica, has a black prime minister, you say, well, those people are in power. That's black power. But that's baloney. That is hogwash. That's a damn lie.
But Jamaica wasn't ready to elect a black leader. Instead, it turned again to the brown middle classes, to a trade union leader who'd been educated in London. Michael was Norman's second son, but he spoke to a whole new generation.
He was tall and handsome, and the girls at school used to whistle at him and call him sexy, and I loved that.
We didn't need another Norman who didn't have that common touch. But he proved to be something his father never was, somebody who would stir a crowd and pull them along with him by just the sheer magnetism of what he said and how he said it.
Right, brother.
Daddy was cut out for it. He had that secret ingredient that Buster had, which I think Daddy used, I suspect, a little more honorably.
Physically very active, and of course, perhaps the most handsome man in the country.
Darling, you're so beautiful.
He was good looking and believed in keeping his body fit. I mean, I always say to people, when I fell in love with his midriff. I'd never seen a midriff so flat.
Michael Manley was born in St. Andrews, Jamaica. He met his first wife while studying at the London School of Economics. They had one daughter, Rachel. Though his first love was journalism, Michael returned home to find his political destiny already laid out for him.
I recall telling him that I didn't think the PNP was radical enough, and he got very angry. Manley was very good at getting angry and losing his temper when he said that if you want to be a Che Guevara, you can go to the hills, but I'm not into that. And I said, well, I don't want to be a Che Guevara and I don't want to go to the hills, but I just think that the People's National Party is too rooted in the middle class to make the kind of changes that I believe necessary to uplift the working class and the disadvantaged.
When Norman Manley died in 1969, Michael became leader of the People's National Party. Jamaica desperately needed new direction. There was high unemployment, poverty, and almost no social welfare. Manley believed he knew what had to be done and how to take the people with him.
There was a thing called the bandwagon, which grabbed artists, popular artists, and went around the country to different locations. There was the whole business of getting away from the ostentation, that the official dress was going to be shirt jacks.
Flamboyant, charismatic, good-looking, eloquent, Michael Manley could convince you that he's the greatest guy in the world, and you'd believe him.
I remember one night during the campaign, the people got so excited about him that they would literally pick him up when he appeared. And I don't know what went wrong this night, but as they maneuvered through the crowd with him up there, he fell, they dropped him. And he cracked a couple of ribs. We had to rush to the hospital, do all of that stuff. And you know, the next day he was out on the campaign trail again.
We've come too far, we're not turning back now. We've come too far, we're not turning back now. We have a pride now, we have a place now, we have a mission now. And I say it to you, my friends, together we are going to march forward under God's heaven, building democratic socialism. Glory to socialism!
Michael Manley said, yes, people, better must come. Give me a chance and better must come, better will come. And so they bought it.
Michael Manley swept to power and became the country's 5th Prime Minister. He was following in the footsteps of his father, but had his own vision for the future of Jamaica. His would be a socialist agenda, grounded in a new sense of nation and based on its African heritage and black pride. In the early 1970s, he gave land to the farmers, created jobs for the poorest working class women, and most importantly, provided free education, not just for the privileged, but for every child. Under Manley, Jamaicans would be in charge of their own destiny.
This government had started a program of change, the like of which had never been seen in Jamaica. Young people were getting education at last. For years, women in this country never knew their own children. Because of the long hours, by the time they could get home, the children had to be asleep in bed. And nobody cared. And this government cared because of democratic socialism.
He just bucked the system. He just went in there and picked up Jamaica by the roots and turned it upside down. That's what independence was about. You were a Jamaican. It didn't matter who was married or not married. You were a Jamaican. You were a member of that family. That was who you were. You had rights. I remember a woman saying it for the first time. I felt like I was walking in my own shoes. And that was when we got the gift of Jamaican independence, not with the flying of the flag.
The social reforms of the 1970s in giving the Jamaican a sense of his own worth and dignity were huge. Much of that legislation was in the most advanced in the world of its time.
Kamanis Estate, where the lands as far as the eye could see, was owned by a single white family. Such privilege was commonplace. Manley wanted radical social reforms to favour the poor. Members of his own class were nervous.
For the other Jamaica, the Jamaica of the wealthy and of the upper middle classes and the rich, things were quite all right, thank you. They'd done very well in the 1960s, in the sort of last hurrah of the post-war economic boom. And why should it change?
A country like Jamaica cannot become a just society if you don't redistribute some of the wealth and some of the benefits. And we have begun that process of redistribution.
Social reform made the establishment uneasy. But Michael's meeting with his longtime hero Fidel Castro would raise the stakes far higher in a way that he could never have foreseen.
Fidel invited Michael to be his guests and travel on his plane to a non-aligned movement meeting in Algiers. That was one of the things we disagreed on because I was not sure if Jamaica could handle the fallout from that trip, or if the party could handle it. I didn't think we were prepared enough for that.
Fidel had always been his hero, so in a way it was the hero taking on flesh and blood characteristics. Daddy was so excited going, and they talked politics for the whole journey, and they immediately had found, you know, in each other kindred spirits.
Michael Manley was the kind of person that would be very receptive to a persuasive argument, well articulated, well presented, well illustrated, with anecdote and analysis. And Castro is a past master of this. Out of that, Michael Manley, I think, caught socialism like a cold and brought it back, and to some degree infected his party.
We don't like the Cuban, none at all. No way. They come to mash up Jamaica.
Jamaicans like to be free to make their own decision. They don't want to feel that you control their lives. And what they'd heard about Cuba